welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and I am joined by the author of a really sweet and funny and sometimes sad, but really insightful and just like a delightful read about life in a veterinary clinic. So hello, welcome to the show. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Sure. And I think I have a photo of it here. My name is Dr. Dawn Filos. Everybody calls me Dr. Dawn. And I wrote Tales of a Pet Vet, stories from the clinic and house calls. And so I'm excited to share it with pet lovers. And it's available paperback, audio, and ebook, which was really fun process, recording the audiobook. Someone else did, but it was fun.
Oh, nice. That's very cool. I'm definitely going to ask about that. Yeah, as I said before, this book is so sweet and so funny and just really like touched my heart as a pet lover. I'm the owner of 2 cats, and there have been cats and dogs throughout my life, and I'm just a real animal lover. So I was so happy when this one fell into my lap. I was wondering if you could start by telling us a little bit about your career and your journey to the book. What drew you to veterinary medicine, and then what drove you to write a book about it?
So the first question, I was just raised in this family of pet lovers, fanatic pet lovers. If you read about Willie the woolly monkey and all our dogs and animals, and I just assumed everyone was like us, but quickly learned we weren't. But my dog, when I was in first grade, we lived outside of New York City, and he had been hit by a car, and so he had complicated surgeries, and I went to this animal medical center, which is still there. It's a premier hospital, and just the care and the process, I was like, that cemented it for me. I'm like, they're just like us, willing to do anything. And so that got me on this path. And so I've been practicing over 32 years. I started the house call practice 20 years into my practicing, but earlier than that, I like teaching. I really connect with certain clients, and I would write extra information down for them to make sure that they got the point. And then I had an opportunity, and I did a bunch of teaching and thought, well, I do all this work, I'm going to put it on a website, on a blog, which is Dr. Dawn the Pet Vet. And I would write medical information, but then I just enjoyed writing so much. And I started writing personal anecdotes or about like how poorly trained my dogs are, or just real life funny stuff. Are you trying to work from home and your dog barks? And also another topics that inspired me, like the benefits, emotional, physiological, psychological of living with pets and the human animal bonds. And those articles got a lot of feedback. People seem to want more of that. And I thought, okay, that combined with popular like stories that I would tell my friends and family for decades, like, oh, tell the one about, the red underwear and the client, And so I developed this sort of repertoire, or I had a lot of information to mine for humor and gross and everything. And it just sort of, I thought, well, I like writing, I'll put it into a book. And so here I am several years later with what I think encapsulates what we experience from puppy and kittenhood or all the way to the end of life. I hope that pet lovers these stories will resonate with them. And the stories, as you can see, some chapters have more information, but for the most part, the information drives the stories, and kind of you learn what it's like to be a vet. And, I talk about, it's like behind the scenes Anthony Bourdain mixed with a modern day James Herriot, mixed with the humor and the human mistakes of Marley and me, kind of all wrapped into one book. And that's probably the most familiar books that I could compare it to. So there is no one size fits, but I think you've read it. Tell me if you agree.
I think those are very good, like touchstone books for it, because it does feel a lot like all of those in both, not just the content, but I think in the tone too. And there's like so much empathy in the book, like both for animals and for their owners, I think. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I really did come to love so many of my patients and clients, particularly being in their homes and having these connections, which just I said that it took me 20 years to realize my home was in the home of my clients. And part of that, it's a lot of these details are in the book, but I had done one in-home euthanasia before my practice, and that was a game changer. And I'm like, I need to do more of this. And so that became a big part of my house call practice as well. Not exclusively, but it was a service I had to offer people thereafter. And I'm glad I did.
yeah, could you talk a little bit about, the decision to move into house calls and what you think that that offers you, as both a doctor and as a person who loves animals? Like, what do you see at home that you don't really get to see at your clinic?
Well, I worked in clinics, but you are only given a certain time period, which will sometimes get derailed by emergencies. To do a 15-minute, say, average, or phone calls, and that experience is challenging. You certainly can see more appointments, but I see it as a quality versus quantity. Not to say that you can't do quality work, but for example, a cat, you're a cat mom. By the time they walk in the door, they're done. We have a very tiny window, and I saw so many cats that were really not even getting to the vet because of the stress of getting there. So this is a whole population that you don't, particularly with cats who are so good at disguising problems until it's really kind of advanced. I just would sneak in there, try to get my questions. Hopefully they would be in a powder room, and I come in and out before they even have escalated. And they're a completely, oftentimes, not always, but a different patient at home and granted, by the second or third time, they know it's me, but it's just more realistic less fear. I wouldn't say 100%, but fear-free, stress-free, or less of it. And I wouldn't say they are happy that I'm there, but I think they're far happier than having to come to me. And so that combined with, which is clear, my mission, a lot of people that live alone, senior clients that maybe have disabilities. I had a blind client who, she was amazing. I don't know. I think I'll have to write another book with her story in it, because she was like a 90-pound woman with 2 giant pit bulls, and they were lovely, but they were kind of scary. And I'm like, are you really going to help me hold the dogs? But like, I just was exposed to people in their homes and in their lives. And I love hearing people's stories. I love the stories that come along with the pets. I really enjoy meeting people because they're like me in some other version, and they're far more interesting than I will ever be. So this, while it's a memoir, these stories are a little bit of mine, and there are other people who I've met that have inspired me or made me a little crazy, or I felt, we all are eccentric about our pets. So they're people who I've met that I thought their experience was worth sharing and people could relate to them.
Mm. Yeah, I imagine that when you are inside people's homes with them, that both gives you like really useful like environmental information about like the environment that might be shaping like the animal's condition. But I imagine like, does it also make diagnosis easier? Because I mean, my cat, I brought her to the vet once. Like she goes regularly, but I brought her for like an emergency condition once. And she was so freaked out that I was like, how could you tell the difference between like her distress at her condition and her distress at like just being here right now? Like that's
100%. Like blood pressure, why are we even bothering in the clinic? Because it's irrelevant. So I mean, we do, and with time they relax, but it is, I think I'm at a distinct advantage over my brick and mortar colleagues in many respects. And I think you actually save time just walking into a house, particularly let's say a multi-cat household. because as you know, there can be another cat that is stressing them, or they're fighting over the food bowl. And why is this condition not getting better? Because you just look around. Or in the case of Jenny, a dog in my book, her cup was a big gulp. Her cup was like 7 cups, and we're wondering, why isn't she losing weight? A cup is a cup. But in the home, you just glean information. How many stairs is this older dog needing to climb? Let's put a ramp here. Let's move the food bowl away from the wall. Stuff that would take 15 questions just to get to the bottom of in the exam while the patient's panting and just done. So I do really think I have more advantages than disadvantages in the house call environment.
So one of my favorite points of the book was what you have to say about like how let's say how we relate to pets has changed over the years. And you describe a sort of shift between like conceptualizing it as pet ownership to pet parenting. So could you talk about that point a little bit? And like, because your stories really do reveal, I think, that change. Like we really relate to our animals as though they are our family members.
Yeah, and I'd say, there's about 4 different things that have sort of evolved, kind of the shifts in pet ownership. And that's one of them, this anthropomorphization that when I was growing up, and we loved pets, my goodness, more than anyone that I knew, but we didn't even have this in our vernacular, this pet parent and fur baby. I prefer pet parent, but I think it's telling because as society, the way it is now, how it's evolved, many of our kids, or the younger generation, are delaying starting families, starting their career. They might live they're traveling with their jobs, and they want to give love, and so they have these pets, and it becomes their children until they're actually, if they ever have them. Same on the other end of the spectrum. I'm kind of one of these, seeing myself, as I have friends, each child that moves away to college, they get another pet, they want to nurture. And you see different priority and care, which I talk about in Tales of the Pet Vet, of this generation, how they see it as other generations. And just the ways that you can spoil a pet. It's crazy, the options that are there now. And I remember in the beginning of my career, I'd have a few clients that would dress up, and if it was a little dog, I would be like, go to Build-A-Bear, see if you can find something. But now, it's staggering, the arrays. And some of these plush pet kennels that I've worked with, I've said, who's having the better vacation? Yeah. Like, I think the dog kennel's nicer than where we're going. They have pools, and it's crazy. But why shouldn't they? My God, they give us unconditional love and things that we need. And so I think that translates into a desire. I don't want to say a demand, but we have been able to expand what we are able to do in veterinary medicine if it's right for the pet owner or parent, and they treat them like children. Sometimes they treat them better, and why not? They don't talk back, some do, but for the most part, how can you not want to spoil them medically and otherwise?
Oh, absolutely. I laughed so hard when you mentioned blueberry facials, because my sister used to have a Shih Tzu who she took to get a blueberry facial once. And I was like, I've never even had a blueberry facial.
I know. And it's like, I think it's in the book, there was one of these very upscale, these flights, these that you can fly on a private jet. And then there was in Chicago, and I think in New York, I met someone who worked with this company. They have their hotel room, they get massages. One of the things you could opt for while the dog was staying there is driving in a limo through a McDonald's for takeout. And I'm like, pardon me? Like, these are the things they offer. So sometimes it's a bit out there. It's always entertaining to me. I like to share that kind of stuff as well as all the other. And so it's gotten to and I do pet portraits. I'm an artist. I'm feeding right into it, but I enjoy it. And what's the harm? Okay, McDonald's, eating a lot of McDonald's. I can't recommend that, but lots of other, give your dog a massage. Why not?
Yeah,
What's the
sounds
harm?
really nice. Yeah. Um, to turn to like some, the sadder and like the more vulnerable moments of your profession, I always think about how like for the euthanasias, you are with people on what's going to be one of the worst days of their life as a course of your regular daily life. And so
Right.
I'm really curious about how you care for them and how you care for yourself having to sort of do that like emotional labor in addition to the medical work.
Well, and this was extremely important in my house call practice, because I was like, with very few exceptions, I mean, sort of emergent situations happen, but I would limit myself, because I remember I had one day where I had 3 scheduled, and I was like, I hope someone changes their mind and cancels, and they did, because we wake up and we're sad, and you can see in the book. I mean, I've known some of these patients for so long, and I am not emotionally detached. I mean, I hold it together, but in the process, my family, I can't even quantitate how many hours I spend, particularly when I didn't know the patient beforehand, and I try not to do that anymore, but to help them make that decision, because this is the one thing you have to get right. I speak for myself and so many clients. I will never forget. You always remember, I think, the rest of your life when your pet passed away, or that euthanasia experience. And it's the worst thing in the world if it doesn't go smoothly. I've gotten very particular and good at making it smooth, and I did it in the clinic and so many of my colleagues do, and sometimes that's the only way to do it. But getting to the point where the clients feel comfortable, that they understand that it is, we're sparing them of inevitable pain and suffering. I never put myself in a position where I've had clients regret doing it when they did. They more regret waiting too long, which I did myself with my own dog, which I believe I talk about in the book. So I come to the table. My baggage is sort of, here's what happened to me. I waited too long for this reason. I will regret that forever moving forward. And I say the same thing. And it takes hours. Sometimes people reschedule. You can never push these decisions. I recently put my dog India to sleep, who's a character. She's so much of the book. It was the hardest, because I've had situations where they were emergencies. It was the hardest decision I've ever made, because you sort of second doubt. I was that person. I was never that person, but it was just the situations just made it extra difficult. And so I get it. I've been there. I sympathize, and it's emotional for all of us. We love these pets, and I think that comes through. So I'm a pet parent. I'm a vet, but I'm a pet parent, and I'm a particularly imperfect pet parent. So I poke fun at myself quite a bit. You may have noticed, and so I hope that puts people at ease. And when I share some of these stories that are a little more out there, I hope it gives me license to say, this is a little crazy, but I get it. These are some of the, so that people aren't like, oh, she's making fun, but I make fun of myself. So maybe I will be forgiven.
Yeah, I think so, because yeah, the sad stories are balanced out by really funny ones. And I do love like that your humanity comes through in them and that you do show your process. And I imagine that's really great for, your patients and their parents too.
Yeah, and I think for pet parents out there, that I'm speaking about myself, but so many of my friends and colleagues, we're in this because we love what we do. And if you don't love your vet, find another one, because they're out there. And it's an important relationship. And I think it's so important for people to know these things and to really be comfortable and have faith in, and then take their advice. Don't second guess them. Just trust them, do what they say. That's why you meet with them. That's why you pay them, you know.
Yeah, it's so much good advice like that wrapped up in these really lovely stories. And just thank you so much for coming to join us and for sharing this book with us. I think our patrons will really love this one.
I sure hope so. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm thrilled that you enjoyed the book, and I appreciate the opportunity to chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Listeners, now it's on you. You're going to check out Tales of a Pet Vet, stories from the clinic and house calls. It is absolutely beautiful. You will really love it. And yeah, please check it out at your favorite library or independent bookstore, wherever you go. Okay,
Thank you
everybody.
so much.
Thank you. It is now time to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.